Before we dive into today's video, I do want to talk to you about something that has enriched my life, and that's none other than today's sponsor, Wondrium. Wondrium is a video subscription service that's like a museum for your mind, an institute for your imagination, a gallery for your personal genius. Look, personally, I love learning new things, no surprise there. Also like challenging myself, and that's why I think Wondrium is amazing. They offer a carefully curated collection of short and long form videos, as well as tutorials, how-tos, travel logs, and documentaries, where you can hear firsthand from trusted, respected, and inspiring experts and non-fiction storytellers. They've got a constantly evolving library of content which updates monthly. Their expansive courses cover everything from beer tasting to learning a language, even yoga. And did I mention it's all ad-free? Plus, you can enjoy Wondrium from just about anywhere. Whether you're working out, cleaning your home, or driving, you can stream and learn something new from your TV, tablet, laptop, or phone. Recently, a series that I checked out was Inventions That Changed the World, which, you'll guess what it covers, inventions that changed the world. Like, if you like a channel like this, you're probably gonna dig that one. So if you want to give Wondrium a try, they're offering you a free trial. Just go to wondrium.com/brainfood to start that free trial today. There's a link in the description below. Thank you to Wondrium for sponsoring, and now back to today's video. In the summer of 1868, construction began on the Eads Bridge, a 450-meter span across the Mississippi River in St. Louis, Missouri. The center of the span of the bridge was supported by two large masonry piers, which had to be built directly on the bedrock 30 meters below the riverbed. In order to accomplish this, the construction team, under the direction of Captain James Buchanan Eads, made use of a brand new innovation, the caisson. Invented in the 1840s by French engineer Carl-Jean Triger, the caisson consisted of a large inverted wooden chamber which was sunk to the bottom of the river and pumped full of compressed air. This kept water from leaking into the chamber, allowing workers to dig down through the mud on the bottom of the river. As they dug, the masonry pier was constructed stone by stone inside the caisson, causing the whole assembly to sink deeper and deeper until the bedrock was finally reached. At first, all went smoothly, but as the excavation depth passed 20 meters, workers began falling prey to a mysterious illness. On emerging from the caisson at the end of a shift, they were struck down by severe itching, headaches, and joint pain, causing them to bend double in agony. Many became paralyzed from the waist down, while others died within hours or days. By the time the Eads Bridge piers were completed, nearly 25% of the caisson workers had been afflicted, with 15 dying and 2 being permanently disabled. At first, these strange symptoms were simply dubbed caisson disease, but as the victims' bent double posture reminded onlookers of the Grecian bend, a popular women's fashion from the 1820s, the affliction soon gained a new name that remains infamous to this day: the bends. While first observed in caisson workers, the bends, more properly known as decompression sickness or DCS, is today more closely associated with deep-sea divers. However, in both cases, the cause is exactly the same. Decompression sickness is caused by breathing air at high pressure, which causes increasing amounts of nitrogen to become dissolved in the diver's tissues. If the diver then ascends too rapidly to the surface, the sudden decrease in pressure can cause this nitrogen to come out of solution like carbon dioxide out of an opened can of soda, forming small bubbles which can wreak havoc on the body. Bubbles forming on the skin or joints can cause itchiness and joint pain. Bubbles pressing on nerves can cause paralysis and other neurological issues. And bubbles forming in the bloodstream can form embolisms, leading to breathing problems, tissue necrosis, strokes, and even death. Traditionally, these 3 types of symptoms were known as the bends, the staggers, and the chokes. But today, decompression is typically divided into 2 categories based on severity. Type 1 affecting the skin and muscles, and Type 2 affecting the central nervous system and other organs. Decompression sickness does not just affect divers and 19th century caisson workers. Mountaineers and pilots ascending to high altitudes too quickly can also suffer from DCS, as can astronauts embarking on extravehicular activities or spacewalks. As too great of a pressure difference between the inside and the outside of a spacesuit would cause it to balloon and become stiff, they are typically operated at lower pressure than spacecraft, a difference that can cause nitrogen to bubble out of the astronaut's tissues. So, how then does one avoid getting the bends? One technique used by recreational divers, who are typically restricted to a maximum depth of 40 meters, is to time dive so that the body does not absorb dangerous levels of nitrogen. This is done using a set of standardized dive tables, or a dive computer based on the nitrogen uptake of the average human, determining how long the diver can remain at certain depths without risking DCS. If multiple dives are conducted in a single day, each dive must be shorter or shallower than the one before due to the cumulative absorption of nitrogen by the diver's body. Typically, it takes around 24 hours on the surface surface for tissue nitrogen levels to return to normal and for longer dives to be safely made again. For longer dives, or perhaps much deeper, divers must first perform one or more compression stops on their way to the surface to allow the nitrogen to slowly diffuse out of their tissues without forming dangerous bubbles. This requires more planning than shallow recreational dives, but divers must carry enough breathing gas to last through the decompression stops as well as the main dive itself. Such dives are also considerably more dangerous, for in the event of an emergency, such as an air supply failure, a diver cannot simply ascend to the surface without risking potentially fatal decompression sickness. The deeper and longer a diver descends, the longer they must spend decompressing. For industrial divers, like those who work on offshore oil rigs, this quickly becomes a problem, as the required decompression time soon begins to greatly exceed the time spent working underwater. For example, an hour spent at a depth of 75 meters requires around 8 hours of decompression. For this reason, such divers typically employ a technique known as saturation diving. Saturation diving is based on the principle that after a certain time spent at depth, the diver's body becomes fully saturated with nitrogen such that a required decompression time remains the same no matter how long they remain underwater. When not working, saturation divers live in a pressurized habitat, typically mounted on the deck of a ship or oil platform that is maintained at the same pressure as the diver's working depth. At the start of a shift, the divers are carried down to their working depth using a pressurized diving bell or transfer capsule, which also returns them to the habitat at the end of the shift. When, at last, the diver's tour of duty is over, they begin the long decompression process. The general rule of thumb is 1 day per 30 meters of depth plus a day, meaning that saturation diving at 200 meters requires a full week of decompression. For greater depths, this process can take up to several weeks. While this may seem tedious, it is considerably more convenient and much safer to decompress only once rather than multiple times as with regular bounce dives. However, living at pressures 8 times that at sea level brings with it a host of other dangers, with even a minor equipment failure potentially leading to a quick and grisly death. And this brings us to the rather gruesome story of the Byford Dolphin accident in 1983. Byford Dolphin was a semi-submersible offshore oil rig built by Aker Engineering of Oslo in 1974. Weighing 3,000 tons and manned by a crew of 100, it was capable of drilling in waters up to 460 meters in depth. To allow the construction and maintenance of the wellhead at these depths, the rig was equipped with a sophisticated saturation diving system built by French firm Comex. On November 5, 1983, the rig was drilling in the Frigg gas field in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea. At 4 a.m., British divers Edwin Coward and Roy Lucas were resting in the dive chamber, while Norwegian divers Bjorn Bergensen and Truls Hellervik were returning from their shift in the transfer capsule. The capsule was hoisted from the water and docked to the dive chamber by diving tenders William Crammond and Martin Saunders, allowing Bergensen and Hellervik to climb through a short trunk to join Coward and Lucas. The normal procedure was for the divers to first seal off the trunk and isolate the chamber so the tenders could depressurize the capsule and detach it from the airlock. But before Hellervik could close the chamber hatch, William Crammond released the clamp securing the capsule to the trunk. The results were immediate and horrific. The capsule violently decompressed and blasted away from the trunk, killing Crammond and severely injuring Saunders. While inside the chamber, the pressure dropped instantaneously from 9 atmospheres to 1. Hellervik, crouching in the trunk, was blown apart, scattering body parts across the rig deck. One observer described finding his liver complete as if dissected out of the body, while parts of his spine were found 10 meters above the chamber on the rig derrick. The other divers in the chamber fared little better. Autopsies of Coward, Lucas, and Bergensen revealed lumps of white fat clogging their arteries and veins, proteins which had cooked and precipitated as their blood flash boiled. Mercifully, all 4 divers died instantly and painlessly without even time to realize that anything had happened. A subsequent investigation concluded that the accident was caused by human error. As William Crammond was killed in the incident, it is not known why he released the clamp before the chamber hatch was closed. Investigators surmised that a combination of fatigue and deck noise may have led to the fatal miscommunication. However, another key factor was the saturation diving system itself, which, despite recommendations from Norwegian oil and gas regulator DNV, had not been fitted with any interlocks, pressure gauges, or other safety features to prevent the diving chamber from being disconnected while pressurized. This fault in the equipment was not mentioned in the official accident report, and as such, the families of the divers received no financial compensation. Believing the investigation to be a cover-up, the families formed the North Sea Divers Alliance, which finally succeeded in suing the Norwegian government and obtaining a settlement in 2008, 25 years after the accident. The buy for Dolphin rig is still in operation, currently on contract with British Petroleum, and saturation diving continues to be widely used in the offshore oil industry, consistently ranking among the most dangerous but well-paid jobs in the world, with many divers receiving up to $1,400 per day. While safety measures and accident rates have improved significantly since 1983, the buy for Dolphin incident stands as a stark reminder of the dangers that always come with living and working in extreme environments. In any event, going back to more normal decompression issues, more typical divers face, if somehow all the normal precautions fail and a diver still finds themselves with a case of decompression sickness, they can be treated through the use of a recompression chamber. First developed by engineer Ernst Moir in 1889 to treat workers suffering from caisson disease during the construction of New York's Hudson River Tunnel, recompression chambers allowed victims of DCS to be returned to their original working pressure, causing nitrogen bubbles to be reabsorbed into their tissues. The chamber can then be decompressed at a slower, safer rate, allowing nitrogen to be gradually expelled from the victim's body. By now, you're probably wondering, if breathing nitrogen causes the bends, well, why not just get rid of the nitrogen altogether? Astronauts and high-altitude pilots actually use this exact technique, something, if you were paying attention, you saw Tom Cruise doing in the beginning of the film Maverick. In this one, his character was pre-breathing pure oxygen prior to donning his pressure suit in order to purge nitrogen from his body. However, the same technique can't be used in diving for below 6 meters in depth because pure oxygen becomes toxic, potentially leading to seizures, lung damage, detached retinas, and other serious effects. Enriched nitrox breathing mixtures with an oxygen content higher than the 21% found in regular air are sometimes used to reduce decompression times, but these can only be used at relatively shallow depths. This is because the toxicity of oxygen depends not on its concentration in a gas mixture, but rather its partial pressure, the contribution it makes to the overall pressure of the mixture. Thus, while regular compressed air is safe to breathe at most recreational diving depths, below 66 meters, the oxygen partial pressure becomes too high and oxygen toxicity becomes a risk. The solution is to dilute the breathing gas to a lower oxygen concentration. While this dilution can be done with nitrogen, this not only increases the risk of decompression sickness, but also another, more bizarre diving hazard known as nitrogen narcosis or rapture of the deep. This is a type of intoxication caused by breathing nitrogen at high pressures, and it can lead to impaired vision, vertigo, paranoia, or extreme giddiness and euphoria, all of which can be highly dangerous in a diving environment. Thankfully, the condition is instantly reversible by simply ascending to a shallower depth. Due to these dangers, divers working at depths below 66 meters typically breathe heliox, a mixture of oxygen and helium. Helium is one of the few non-toxic gases that is not narcotic when breathed under pressure, and thus allows oxygen in the breathing mixture to be diluted while reducing the risk of decompression sickness and nitrogen narcosis. Heliox is also less dense than regular air, making it easy for the diver to breathe. However, the mixture does have its disadvantages. For example, helium is more thermally conductive than air, meaning heliox divers risk losing body heat and suffering hypothermia. The gas also gives divers the classic high-pitched helium voice, making communication rather difficult. One can only imagine the hilarity if something is going seriously wrong and you have to communicate this to the surface in your little Alvin and the Chipmunks voice. Another disadvantage of heliox is its high cost, which is why many divers instead use trimix, a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium that contains only enough helium to offset the risk of decompression sickness and nitrogen narcosis. The exact proportion of these gases depends on the depth and duration of the dive, meaning heliox and trimix are usually custom blended for each descent. However, below depths of around 150 meters, even heliox begins to have adverse effects on the human body, causing a disorder called high pressure nervous system, or HPNS, also known as helium tremors. This causes a variety of symptoms, including muscle spasms and tremors, visual disturbances, dizziness, and impaired focus. If this seems strangely familiar, yes, HPNS is what made Michael Biehn's character go crazy in the 1989 James Cameron film The Abyss, and for more on another piece of diving tech featured in that film, please do check out our previous video, Can Humans Breathe Liquid Like in the Abyss? To avoid HPNS when diving to truly extreme depths, divers must switch to more exotic breathing mixtures, such as hydraliox or hydrox, composed of various proportions of oxygen, helium, and hydrogen. In 1988, such a mixture was used by divers of the French industrial deep-sea diving firm Comex to set the world depth record of 534 meters beneath the Mediterranean Sea. 4 years later, Comex diver Theo Mavrostromos made an even deeper simulated dive in a hyperbaric chamber, descending to an equivalent depth of 701 meters. This record still stands to this day, and in case you're wondering, no, breathing hydrox or hydreliox will not turn an underwater habitat into a bomb or a diver into a fire-breathing dragon. At the pressures where such mixtures become necessary, the proportion of oxygen needed to support life is less than 1%, far too low to support combustion. In conclusion, deep-sea diving comes with all sorts of unexpected risks, with nearly every gas having some sort of nasty side effect on the body when breathed at high pressure. It's almost as if we humans didn't evolve to live in such environments. This, combined with the fact that there are some of the scariest creatures imaginable lurking down there, begs the question, why do we even want to go down there again? That's not even to mention stepping out of our front door in the first place. There are people out there. No, thank you.